Welcome to Tangent PropTech, where real estate meets innovation and goes a bit off script. I'm Edward Cohen, PropTech entrepreneur and your host, alongside my co-hosts and PropTech venture capitalists, Jeffrey Berman and Zach Ahrens. On this show, we bring on a guest who's shaping the future of real estate. We dive into housing innovation, climate tech, the future of work, and everything transforming our buildings and cities. And of course, we go on some tangents. If you work in real estate, PropTech, development, or if you're just obsessed with making buildings and cities better, this show is for you. Because sometimes the best real estate ideas start with a tangent. Hi, I'm Edward Cohen. Welcome to Tangent.
Hello, this is Jeffrey Berman on video, which is a super rare occurrence.
Today on Tangent, we have Andrew Ackerman, head of Reach Labs, professor of Cy Sims School of Business, and author of the new book and soon-to-be New York Times bestseller, The Entrepreneur's Odyssey. Hi, Andrew. Where does this podcast find you?
I'm in New York City.
Where else? Anyway, Andrew, you have over a decade in startup investing and done 70-plus investments, and you've been deeply involved in PropTech as a founder, investor, and now published author. So tell us, how did you get here for the people that don't know you?
So I've actually been investing for almost 20 years. And my career journey only makes sense sort of in retrospect. It's like I started off, I came out of business school and there was no real startup scene in the 90s. I mean, people who did startups, said, oh, I have a startup. It's like, oh, so you're unemployed, right? That's kind of what entrepreneur meant. So off business school and they're like, door on the right is iBanking, door on the left is consulting. If you're here for marketing, you're in the wrong school, Chicago booth. I knew I didn't want to be an iBanker, so I did consulting for a couple of years. And then in 1999, I'm on this project and we built this really cool intranet for a pre-merger integration so that, they could have pro forma financials by pushing a button. Now remember, this is 1999. So you pushed a button, then you went out to dinner and came back an hour and a half later and it was done running. But I remember thinking, that's what I wanted to do. Like, didn't exist 4 years ago, it exists now. So I moved back to New York. About a year later, I'm in my first startup, have a decent exit. Along the way, I started angel investing. And then I meander back and forth from a family office to another startup, to almost doing another startup. And then finally I land in Dreamit Ventures, which is the third oldest accelerator. At the time, it was one of the top 5 or 10 accelerators. And then I become not an angel, but someone who has to start thinking about, how do I construct a portfolio? How do I source in mass? So I kind of take that game to the next level. And I've been in that game ever since.
We're every single hat possible out there. Andrew, so, through the years, how has your perspective on the PropTech landscape evolved? It's hard to compare apples to apples, different times and different, stages in the cycle, but tell us, how has your perspective evolved?
Oh, sure. So Jeffrey's been in the world for like forever and a half. I remember coming in, we started looking at PropTech seriously around 2015, 2016. Couldn't get in yet. We just didn't feel like the market was big enough. We didn't feel like the players were willing to adopt.
That was 7 years after we were already playing around.
I know. Like, there are not a lot of people that make me look like a newcomer, and Jeffrey's one of them. Which reminds me of a funny
Are you
story.
saying I look old?
No, man.
You
look ageless ever since you got rid of the man bun, right? Yeah, that was not your finest moment. I didn't want to tell you that, but
it was awful. I looked like a grizzled old lady.
It was like, it's like the bell bottoms of hairdos. You look back at those photos.
I miss the long hair sometimes, but because it did give me magical powers.
No, you could rock like long hair, like 80s long hair, not boy band long hair.
Yeah.
But we digress, right?
It was a tangent.
Wait, where were we in? So 2015, 2016, we looked at it and we were really interested in it. And we were like, okay, let's keep an eye on it. And then we had the opportunity to really dive in around the end of 2016 because we got connected with a gentleman named Jeff Vinnick down in Tampa, who was renovating huge tracts of the Tampa skyline, so I guess shoreline. And it matched with our model of getting later stage, for an accelerator anyway, startups into areas where they could actually meet with customers. So when we had that opportunity in front of us, we started thinking, well, let's actually sit down and look at the space. Like how much seed and Series A activity is actually happening here. And what we noticed is it was something like 1% of the activity this is going back looking at 2016 numbers, it was within 1% of the health tech activity in 2011, 2012, when we first started getting into health tech. And that actually did very well for Dreamit. So we're like, this could be the time to get in. And then we did a ton of interviews with developers and property managers and all the like to see if like the attitudes towards adopting tech had started to shift. We got the sense that it was it was there. So right around then we felt this sea change, like it's ready, it's kind of ripe. And we jumped in with 2 feet. Now over the years, it's gone kind of up and down. But we've seen this in a lot of industries. Like people get excited and it's like this shallow tin, like a baking tin full of water, and you lift one corner and all the water rushes to one side. And, then you get everyone and their dad coming in and like, oh, I'm an angel investor now. And you get dumb money chasing dumb deals with guys that maybe should never left their day job. And then all of a sudden, like something goes bad. And then all those like newcomers are like, oh yeah, I'm afraid it's a horrible industry. I'm out. And all the entrepreneurs disappear. And that's actually a great time for serious investors. Because then, you've got the serious entrepreneurs, fewer people chasing those deals. And like you can really great opportunities. But like it's in and out. Every industry is like that.
Be greedy when others are fearful and vice versa. So just quickly for those who are not familiar, tell us about Reach Labs and how does that fit in the ecosystem of the NAR, the National Association of Realtors, and
Sure.
what startups are going through the pipeline through the program.
Absolutely. So just at the super high level, I came into venture a little late in life and from a weird direction. So I've always looked at venture from a platform lens. To be a standard VC, like, hey, we're 2 guys, we're really well connected, we can make a lot of introductions for you. That's like every other VC out there, and we wouldn't stand for that in our startups, right? Our startups, we need them to be visibly and obviously different. We need them to be a quantum level better. So like, I don't know why we stand for that in VC. So that's what attracted me to Dreamit, and that's what attracted me ultimately to Reach and Second Century Ventures. So with that as kind of a background, Second Century Ventures is a VC arm, almost like a corporate venture arm, but it's the venture arm of the National Association of Realtors. They set it up back in 2008. The unofficial mission, this is my wording, not theirs, is, oh my God, where did Zillow come from? That can't happen again, right? We don't want to be the travel agents of the next decade. So they set up this venture arm so they could kind of look over the horizon, see what was going on in the venture space, and influence the startups to work with real estate agents, with realtors, rather than to disintermediate them or to work against them. And they've been actually very, very successful. They stood up a bunch of programs called Reach. They've got 8 programs around the world, 2 in the US, 1 for residential, 1 for commercial, Canada, Latin America, the UK, Australia, Israel, and what we're now calling Reach Middle East, which is everything but Israel in the Middle East. Hopefully they'll work together. They're later stage for accelerators. So you're talking about post-revenue. They can be pre-Series A, even pre-Series B companies. And the theme is somehow, ideally, they keep the realtor central to the transaction. So it either makes a realtor's life easier or it makes them more productive. Doesn't have to be PropTech. There's a lot of vertical SaaS that falls in that bucket, like a DocuSign or a Notarize. Early investments of theirs. They're not PropTech, but they make a real estate agent's life a whole lot easier. And recently they've been branching out a little bit more into, construction tech, into kind of areas of PropTech that leverage kind of the world's largest network of real estate professionals, outside of realtors in addition, even if it's not directly related to realtors. So that's where Second Century and the Reach program fits into the ecosystem.
Fascinating. I mean, we're talking about NAR, the largest trade association in the US with over 1.5 million members. A lot to serve there. There's a lot of that happens in the real estate transaction that doesn't, we wouldn't call it as PropTech, but it's certainly enabling real estate professionals conduct better, more, bigger, smoother transactions. Jeff, didn't you invest in one of those?
Well, we're in Notarize, and it's interesting. We're going through this right now. My wife and I, she'd probably kill me if she knew I was talking about this on our podcast, the number one podcast in the world, by the way. I think last we had, what, 300 million listens?
Wow.
Yet Jeff's wife doesn't listen.
Yes, she does not listen. We invested in Notarize, again, now called Proof, because our top-down thesis, like thematically, we thought ultimately real estate is going to trade similar to the way we traded stocks, which, you know, you could trade on your phone. We could be trading right now, 24 hours a day, whatever. And you could do it seamlessly, frictionlessly, etc. Right now, that process is anything but. My wife and I are in the process of selling our home in Palm Beach, and we're just trying to buy another one. And the process is still so maddeningly
Painful.
Broken. And like, I had to tell the title insurance people, like, hey, let's use Proof to close. I'm not going to be in Florida this summer. They're like, well, you have to have a wet season. I'm like, no, you don't.
2025.
This is legal everywhere. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ. And like all the way to the broker, this is a big tangent, but I feel like I want to go on a rant right now. I think what the world is going to look like is the best brokers. There are a number of people that say, a lot of people that say brokers are going to go away. I do not believe that. I don't believe we're ever going to have an environment where you completely disintermediate the human being, as long as we are a social animal. And there is something about having a human, an adroit human, as part of a process that makes us feel more comfortable. That a machine, at least in my imagination right now, maybe Elon Musk has a different idea 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the future. But the best of the best will continue to survive and thrive, because they're going to use the technical and technological tools that will allow real estate to be traded the way we trade financial instruments, in a rational and as frictionless as it can be way. But it is like, when you look at second century and what they've tried to help do, and yet you still see we're in 2025 and transactions are still painfully broken. And it's partially because of the humans. In fact, I would say it's all because of the humans. You have less than ideal people working on deals that can destroy a deal. There's no reason for this rant other than to say Proof is a great company. I love it. And I don't even understand why I had to explain to the attorney, this is in fact legal. This is in fact a better way to do it.
Did it make your hand shake when you were thinking about it? Was that one of those deals? When you made the investment, you used to tell me that, like, you know, when you saw a really great company, your arm was...
It's the tingle. It's not a shake.
The tingle. Oh, not the twitch. Okay.
No, I was a lead on that investment. That's my partner, Jake.
Yeah.
But actually, along those lines, Andrew, you talked about your experience in the space. This is something my partners and I talk about. Can you point to any outsized exits that you've had as a part of Dreamit or Second Century, where you can say, like, wow, this is a big 10, 20, 30, 40, 50x, 100x return? Because there's a lot of discussion about the venture appropriateness for the real estate technology industry. And by the way, I don't use the term PropTech. I say real estate technology because I find PropTech limiting. And I can talk about that in a second, but.
Okay. So I have like 4 things from the prior rant that we can go into, but let's answer the right question first. So I've never been a control investor. Really, for me, it's all been about, at the stage I get in, what's going to be my multiple, how long it's going to take, what's my ROI. So, you know, I'm a little bit more open to getting into companies that would be $100 million or $300 million exit rather than $1 billion exit, if they're cash efficient and, you know, if the numbers work out for me. I'm just going to call out 2 companies, and I apologize for anyone that I should have mentioned already. But we had a company called Snapped. As background to anyone who's not maybe in the multifamily or the single family rental space, the whole point of qualifying and vetting your tenant is to avoid, you know, having to kick them out and deal with that whole eviction process. And they found that a lot of the eviction processes, when you went back to the root cause were essentially fraudulent documents on the way in that weren't caught. So they developed a system that would make sure that, like, you could tell if somebody photoshopped their bank statements and other stuff like that. So when we looked at them, great entrepreneurs, they were living the problem. It was a solution they built for themselves. It was painful and it was widespread. But we had this long debate. Is it a point solution that ultimately is part of a bigger company, or is its own company? And we actually had this debate internally. My feeling was even if it's a point solution and it gets acquired, it'll be a quick acquisition and the ROI will be good for us. And then we had one of the other partners who, unfortunately for me personally, kind of won the debate. It's like, no, it's not going to be big enough. We're not going to exercise our rights in there. And fast forward, like I think 3 years after raising just a safe, a $2 million safe, they had a $300 million investment, of which, a huge chunk was partial buyout of the founders, and the rest was at a very nice up valuation.
Wait, hold on. They had a $300 million.
No, a $300 million valuation, and the investment was, God, I got to come back to me on the exact dollar amount of the investment, but a good chunk of it was a buyout and some was new money in. But it went from what was essentially a $15 million valuation to $300 million in the space of 2 or 3 years.
What kind of revenue were they doing?
Not my place to say, but it had gone up and to the right. They were doing well.
That is staggering to hear. I'd never heard that story. And it's one that should be publicized, because we looked at Snapped and we had a bunch of our LPs look at it and we passed because they just said, no, we don't need this. We're going to use Yardy's product. And that is a really great, I'm thrilled to hear that.
So again, I want to be very careful because it's not my story to tell in that level of detail. And also they got that money right at the peak of the investment market.
2021.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
So I remember I was standing online to get a COVID test to travel just when we thought it was safe to travel, when I got the call from Daniel. So, it was a little bit inflated, but not so much. Like the guys really, really hit it out.
Well, it doesn't matter. You got all that cash out. I mean, did you invest or not?
So we had a little bit of a stake from our initial investment. Dreamit did not double down in the second round, unfortunately for me personally. So I'm super happy for Daniel. I love to be right. I'd rather be rich and right.
What was the multiple on your first investment?
The way that Dreamit has structured its rounds, at that point, the initial investment came in at roughly 15 or 12 million.
Yeah,
but it was super small.
No, what I'm saying is, what was the multiple?
Oh, so 15 to 30, so 20.
20x.
Yeah, 20.
That's a great example of a venture return. I don't care if you put in $1 or $100 million. It's still your 20x your money. Do you think that it deserves an asterisk because it was in 2021? Like, we have some companies that did rounds in 2021, which I sharply put an asterisk on. It doesn't matter for the founders and for the investors, but could you say, okay, today in 2025, that we would achieve that same outcome? One, would you put an asterisk on that? And two, if you would or wouldn't, have you had any big exits lately in the environment that we find ourselves in now?
So just bear in mind, they didn't exit at that point. That was an up round. They had a personal exit for a good chunk of their own equity, so that counts.
Yeah, but that's an exit.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get my money out, and you know very well that the size of your check in is equal.
I thought you guys got your money out.
No, we didn't get our money out. No.
So the company still exists.
The company still exists, and they actually just recently had an announcement. They're doing well, but anyway, let me answer your two questions first. So number one, does it get an asterisk? If you don't have your money out, there's a huge asterisk there.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you exited.
Yeah.
That's on exit.
Yeah, no. So I apologize. Again, I got into the space a little bit early. So the exits that we've had previously have been kind of nice doubles, and there are a couple of home runs still on deck. So it absolutely deserves an asterisk if you don't have cash on cash yet.
Well, because look, I won't say the company, I don't want to embarrass anybody. We're aware of companies that got investments like that in 2021 at 100x multiples that recently raised at 5 to 10x multiples.
Yeah.
So the compression has been so drastic. Now we're fortunate. We've had a few exits in the last years, both actually one at 20x and one at 22x. But I'm looking at our portfolio and thinking that's the aberration and not the rule.
The second thing I was going to say is when we get into a startup, it's too early, right? So you know what the difference is between too early and wrong? Not a damn thing, right? It doesn't matter. None of your LPs are going to give you credit. It's like, Jeffrey, man, that was a really great investment. If only we'd made it a year earlier in a different company, we'd have been awesome. They don't care about that. So, if you have an exit in kind of the peak of the market, that's the flip side. Do your LPs care if it was a sloppy win versus a real win? No, they don't care. So there's a little irreducible element of luck to what we do. And we're a little bit more fortunate than the later stage guys because, if it takes 8 years to get there or 9 years to get there, like we can live with it. If we were later stage, like a 3-year hold time versus a 4-year hold time is massive. Now, to your bigger question, is the industry kind of like broken because of these cycles and because, we had these up rounds and now we're having down rounds? I don't think so. I think it's just normal growing pains for the industry. The industry is now by now the industry, the real estate industry, the construction industry, the built world industry is so big, and the direction it's traveling, however slowly it's traveling, is so inevitably in the direction we need it to go that it's just a matter of time. Now, time can kill ROI. We know that, but yeah, right. Whether we personally suffer along the way or we do awesome along the way, only time will tell. I'm not one of these guys that's like a naysayer, like, oh, PropTech's over, or, it's too small. We'll get there.
The future of the build world happens here at Blueprint in Las Vegas this September. Join the largest, most global gathering of industry leaders and innovators leading the charge in changing the built world, from construction to transaction, for 3 days of networking, learning, and ecosystem advancement. With trillions of dollars of assets and the best global innovators under one roof, Blueprint 2025 takes place at the Venetian Las Vegas from September 16th to 18th. Tangent listeners save $300 on your all-access pass by visiting blueprintvegas.com/tangent. That's blueprintvegas.com/tangent for a $300 discount for your Blueprint all-access pass. See y'all there.
We look at 1,500 plus companies a year, and everyone who's listened to this podcast before knows our criteria, and Indra, you know our criteria, so I don't have to repeat it. The vast majority of the companies we look at potentially have utility with our LPs, but so few. I'm actually really interested to see where Snapped is now as far as revenue. Forget valuation. To me, that doesn't matter. You can't eat valuation until you exit. But I'm very curious what that looks like now, where their burn rate is, because again, if you didn't exit 2021, you have to forget it. It's no longer relevant. There are companies like we're fortunate that companies in our portfolio that had massive rounds in 2021 continued to grow and grew into their valuations. Otherwise, they would be, and there are a handful that didn't, and now they're just middling along. And we expected that. It's like they'll do fine. They won't lose money, but they're probably going to be maybe a 2x, maybe that's not what people invest in venture for. So it's like, is there another way of qualifying the opportunity to invest in this space and the type of capital that's deployed into it?
I'll tell you the hardest thing for me, it's an extension of the hardest thing for me when I went from being an angel to being a VC. When you're an angel, you get a couple of deals, it's great, it looks good, you're in it for like however long you're going to be in it, and you get in at a low enough valuation that like, okay, big deal. The hard part around portfolio construction for me is when you have a great company, right? You think the company's great, the exit's going to be great, and the round they're in just feels overvalued to you. And you get this a lot in boom times. And we can talk about why, but those are pretty obvious. But the question that I get hit with is, if I don't invest at this valuation, I don't have the pro rata to invest in the next one. Plus, I don't like the way it looks to these guys who are by now like my friends, and I really believe in them. But on the other hand, like the valuation is just stupid. So do you invest knowing that you're going to take a hit on that round, or there's a good chance you're going to take a hit on that round, so that you can stay in the game going forward? Or do you decide not to do it?
I can tell you, I would unequivocally decide not to do it unless I saw we have one portfolio company that I'm in the midst of this, so I can't say which one. You guys are all going to have to guess, where we put a very little amount of money for us. The lead is notorious for overvaluing the companies that they invest in.
Every little piece of data you give me, I'm like, okay, I'm narrowing in on it now.
Well, I mean, I'm speaking slow, so hopefully people will just log off and like, oh,
Yeah.
this is boring. But it's actually super spicy because I love the business and I knew that there was going to be some point where I could put more money in at a better valuation. And that happened.
Mm.
And then the next check I wrote was 3x my original check. So I was able to average
Mm.
down,
Mm.
like, but you have to have a plan for that. If you're going in with a hope and a prayer, like there's a company I'm looking at now. I love the entrepreneurs, love the idea. The price is untethered from reality. And I know what's going to happen. They're going to get it because these guys are rock stars. They're going to raise another round at a ludicrously high valuation. Now, if you told me, hey, Jeff, you'll be able to sell at that round, done. Like, pull a KP Ready
Yeah.
from Shadow, because I think he does that and he does it really well. But that's not our game. So if you told me I could definitely do that, I would do it in a heartbeat because these guys are that good. But that's where there's a disassociation between the narrative and the actual utility the company is bringing.
So if you're not in to the beginning, it's a hard decision. It's less hard than if you're already in. That's the heartbreaking one. But to your point, like when WeWork was first like exploding, they just raised an A round. It was sick. People are like, oh, what do you think of the new model? And I'm like, it's tech-enabled real estate. It's not my thing. It's like, but I guarantee you they're going to get to a D or an E round and it's going to be awesome. And then like the rug is going to get pulled out. And if you could promise me that I could get out, say the D round, I would do it because I know it's going to go that long before. But you can't. I don't know. I don't know how to pull that off.
That's not what business is as investment professionals. It's not being a good fiduciary for your LP's money.
Well, if you can, what would you think? No one really does this, or it's very rare. But revenue-based financing, or almost like a royalty-based financing, where you invest and then you get paid out of multiples of revenue within a couple of years. I mean, would you do that for a company where you thought the valuation was just sick, but the potential was great? I mean, that might be a way to get your money out.
Yeah. Well, there are all sorts of creative ways to get to the end zone. But the wider point that we explore is, when I look at our portfolio, I don't think it's an accident that we have the strongest companies in the space. I don't think it's an accident. It's not because we're so smart. Our LPs make us look good. Like we test it. We have 300 plus owners and operators who own billions of square feet. It makes it easier for us. But for the industry as a whole, where you have like a substantial cohort that will say once bitten, twice shy, we don't believe that PropTech is going to produce these big winners. And so like I so badly wanted the Snap story to be, we exited a $300 million
so did I,
valuation.
Yeah.
Right. No, of course. Yeah. But that's not, I don't think we can use that. So then the answer is no, you haven't seen the big ones. Like we've done multiple exits at 20x plus. And I would say I don't know of any other groups that have had that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't know what's behind.
I would say over the past 2 or 3 years. Yeah, but I guess I'm not as worried about that. So there's this weird,
It's not that I'm worried. No, it's not worried. It's, you look at this, your book is called The Entrepreneur's Odyssey, and don't think I wasn't going to be able to put this in here. When you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to build a business, and you say, well, how am I going to get funded for that business? The wider question is, are you putting yourself at a disadvantage when you say, oh, I have to get venture funding? There's so many businesses that just are not venture appropriate. Get your funding a different way.
Venture, I've said this before, and I've said this to you and probably on panels together, like venture funding is the least worst alternative for a very narrow subset of new businesses. And there are a lot of businesses out there that are better backed other ways. You can grow them out of revenue. You can take business loans out. The reason VC exists for the startups that you and I invest in is because they can't get money any other way. They're not going to generate revenue from day one, so that's not an option. They don't have like hard assets and they're not established revenue models. They can't go out and get a bank loan. And the hard money won't put money on them because they don't get it. So it's really only VC for those startups. And within that subset of startups, they can't get money any other way. There's a very small subset of those that have that rocket ship potential that we're willing to give them the money. So I realized that like my book and the conversations that we're having in general are really only aimed at maybe 5% of the new businesses out there, maybe less. I haven't done the numbers, but there are a lot of people that make a lot of money with new businesses that are nowhere in our space. Like they become car wash kings or, They develop consultancies and they're just awesome at it. We'll never back those guys. That's not bad. That's not good. It's just we're in a different area. We're a different space.
A lot to unpack there, guys. I mean, yeah, there's been also a shift towards venture debt. I mean, recent reports indicate that venture debt is rapidly emerging as a strategic financing mechanism in PropTech, with just under $800 million invested in Q1 of this year alone. How do you guys interpret this trend? Is it a function of, just where we are in the cycle, or, trying to maintain these valuations without being diluted? There's also been a structural shift. I mean, the cost now to get an MVP up, the cost to prove if a company or an idea is viable is much cheaper. You need less capital, you need less human capital to get this up. I mean, only this week we saw Wix, the Israeli website builder, acquire Block 44 for $80 million. It's a vibe coding app, which our guest Luis Poggi talked about in a previous episode from House Whisper. But Wix acquired them after 6 months, and it's solo owned. It doesn't mean there's just one person working there, but I think there's maximum 8 people working there. They got acquired for 80 million. So yeah, it's not the unicorn. However, if you don't have any outside funding, you get acquired after 6 months for 80 million. Yeah, like I think most entrepreneurs now, they would sign that, and now they're part of a huge organization. So has there been a structural shift in how VCs and also founders think about growing companies now with the rise of AI and the rise of other technologies?
Let's answer the venture debt one first, and then we can go into AI. I've always said that venture debt was under indexed, and I never understood why it was so niche for so many years, especially if you're dealing with anything other than pure SaaS. Like, let's say you've got equipment that unlocks your SaaS revenue, some hardware on top of it. Well, let's say you're even an equipment-based startup. I got one company called Traxel. They make this $250,000 machine that lays fiber. I mean, most VCs won't touch anything like that. And part of it's because you're going to raise equity financing to pay for product, to pay for equipment and lock it up. It's not a good match, but it's a great match for venture debt, right? Because venture debt is non-dilutive, or lines of credit, other kind of structural solutions to the problem that don't require you to dilute yourself for stuff that you really shouldn't be raising an equity round for. So I've never really understood why it was so under indexed. I think it was just not well understood. And there was a little bit of this cult of, I'm going to raise VC money. But I think it's absolutely something whose time has come. Now, it's not going to replace VC. It's going to supplement VC. So, there's times where if you got, kind of steady and repeatable revenue, like, why wouldn't you borrow when you can rather than sell parts of your company? Where the exact happy medium is, it depends. It's a company by company thing, but I think we're so far suboptimal on the equity versus debt that it's going to be an interesting time to play in the space. Jeffrey, what do you think? I mean, feel free to tell me I'm totally wrong. You've done it before.
I don't think we have enough time to talk about all my feelings about venture debt. What I do think is along the same lines of like the different types of the cap stacks that are appropriate for different types of businesses. There's a company called ARC. Full disclosure, I'm an angel investor. ARC.tech, ARC.tech. And the idea behind it was that every company is unique and every company's funding and foundation journey is different. And the tools that you can employ should be available all at the same time. In other words, if you want to raise debt financing, it should be from one place, and equity financing from one place, but you should be able to find them all from the same source. And that's what they created. And I thought that was really interesting because you could start to think through, like, what are the practical ramifications as far as your cash flow or lack thereof for the different types of capital that you're raising. Like a company like Traxel is going to have a different type of cash need than a pure SaaS company. So certainly an interesting question.
So I know a couple of funds, and in full disclosure, Second Century Venture has been talking about adding a venture debt in their next fund as part of their strategy. Third Sphere, like they've been doing a bunch of that for a while. The hardest thing that I think has been holding us back is the skill set for underwriting venture debt is so different than it is to decide if you want to make an early stage investment. Like will it work? And there's what's the right price. And the earlier you get in, it's all about will it work? And what's the right price is like secondary. But when you're dealing later stage, you're dealing with debt, what's the right price becomes that much more critical a question. And I wonder if what's holding us back is it's just, there are very few people that have both of those skill sets. And if you're in an early stage fund where, it's two partners, maybe, do you really have one of each, or, you just can't afford to have somebody with that toolkit in-house? I don't know.
Before we move forward, yeah, I just want to mention that Reach Labs, operating in various regions, including the ones that you mentioned, I think it's not only brilliant from a strategic perspective. I mean, there's so much about real estate and about, the founder ecosystem that is localized. And yes, we all, like to work remote or hybrid, but at the end of the day, we are talking about real estate, which has the nuance of having very different landscapes across regions and the different players and how to truly innovate and I don't want to say the D word, but disrupt our old industry. So, just shout out there and special shout out to Omar Rodriguez, Reach Latam's director based in Mexico, and all the work that Andrew is doing there. So Andrew, from practitioner to author, you've written 70 plus short high signal articles and now you've published a book. So why write a book now and what's your book about?
We'll start with the last question first. So I've worked with, I don't know, like maybe thousands of founders, and I've mentored closely a couple of hundred already. And a lot of the same questions came up, and along the way, especially when they're doing this in an accelerator, in an early stage accelerator, where some people are so early on their journey, like it paid to go from like, oh, I can give you advice, kind of ad hoc, a couple of examples. So like, let's come up with some structured curriculum to help these guys. So we started off back in 2015, 2016, just to make the Dreamit program more consistent across geographies. We wrote a structured set of curriculum for everything they needed to know as an early stage founder. And I wrote a good chunk of that curriculum. And as I was writing that, I remember thinking back to a book that I'd read in business school called The Goal. And the reason The Goal was so memorable to me, unlike any other textbook I've ever had, was it was written like a novel about a guy that needed to turn around this printing plant in the Midwest, didn't know what to do. He met a mentor on an airplane, and the guy talked him through the whole process of like turning it around. So I remember like, that would be an awesome way to do it. I mean, stories are more memorable. Whenever I would give advice to a startup, if I could bring a prior startup that I knew or that they knew and tell them how they solved that situation, like that stuck better. So I'm like, oh my God, if I ever have spare time, I'm going to write The Goal, but for startups. And then I still haven't had spare time, but like in 2021, when I left Dreamit and I was starting off at Second Century and I was starting to teach, and I was doing all these separate things, I figured if I don't write it now, I'm never going to write it. So I had a couple of things that I wasn't sure about if I could do. Number one, all my previous writing had been 500 to 800 word articles, right? Because that's what people want to read. Can I do a 200 plus page book? So I wasn't sure if I could do that. Number two, all my articles are basically first person. They're my voice. If I'm writing this like as a novel, people have different voices. They shouldn't all sound like me. Can I do that? And number three, which is kind of the biggest thing, is can I turn this into an actual story, or is it going to be two guys looking at a pitch deck in a conference room at WeWork the entire book? So I just sat down, I started doing it, got, maybe 4 or 5 chapters in before I convinced myself I could actually do it. And I'm like, okay, now I can start telling people. So that's how I did it. Why I did it, just in short, is like business books are boring. Like they're all kind of ghost written by the same bland anecdote, name drop, 20-page PowerPoint stretched into a 200 plus page book, where if you just read the end notes on each chapter and just rip out those 20 pages, you're good to go. Like my eyes glaze over when I read it. And I figured if I'm going to write it, I want to write something that's actually entertaining, that people will enjoy and will stick. So that's why I did it. It's not that there's any shortage of books out there about startups. It's just there's a horrible shortage of ones that are at all interesting, entertaining, and memorable.
Kudos indeed. I mean, books are truly the oldest mass media channel out there, and I think there aren't enough books, one would argue, coming out of the real estate tech space. People are probably too busy building and shipping. But got back to actual reading recently when I acquired a Kindle. I was doing just audiobooks for a while, and I noticed my information retention is higher when I do Kindle than listening to them, even though I do love to listen books. Currently reading The Ascent of Money, History of Finance and Credit by Niall Ferguson. Abundance, of course, and Late to the Party, but also starting The Most Important Thing by Oak Tree Capital Management co-chairman Howard Marks. Jeff, what's your media consumption like these days? Do you watch? Do you listen? Do you read?
All three. I started listening to podcasts, not after we started this one, but
You mean besides your own
I
voice?
don't listen. I don't listen to it. I record it. Why would I have to listen to it? For a very strange reason. I like sitting in a steam room, and ordinarily I would read in a steam room, but the steam room that is available to me gets so steamy I can't even see in front of myself. So I bought a pair of wireless earbuds that are waterproof, and now I listen to all sorts of really scary alt-right content. It's basically the audio equivalent of doom scrolling on X. Woof.
Yeah. So I can't listen to a podcast when something else is going on. I get distracted. I can't listen to it while I work. Like I'm focusing on one thing. So really the only times I'll listen to podcasts is when I run. Right? I do that. I try to do it 2-3 times a week. Not so much, but like a half-hour podcast each time kind of fits the bill. And if I'm in the car, but I live in the city, so I don't drive that much. So it's really just running. I read with like actual books, pen and paper type books on Sabbath, because I try to turn off all my electronics for that. And then during the week, it's all, I'm usually news and other articles on my phone.
Yeah, I find commuting, exercising, going for a walk, running on the bike, whatever you may do, I think those are the best times to be listening, even when you're playing video games, some may say. Last but not least, Andrew, collaboration superpower. If you could choose one person, historic or living, to do a partnership with, who would it be?
Ooh. In the business world, or can I go more broadly?
Anyone. It could be, Zach Aarons would mention Roman emperors.
Yeah, exactly. You can do anything you want.
Oh, okay. So right now, if it were up to me, I would dig up Richard Nixon. The world is so crazy effed up right now. And, from recent memory, like the one person who knew how to negotiate a world like this with so many completing powers and so deftly. I wouldn't trust him for domestic policy at all, but to bring him back to help us unscrew the world we're in, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Tricky Dick. No need to add anything there. Andrew, where can Tangent listeners and founders and real estate pros learn more about the Entrepreneur's Odyssey and connect with you?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm in the process of updating my own personal website. That's andrewbackerman.com. The B's for Benjamin, but I only hear that when I'm in trouble. Or they can go straight to Amazon, Entrepreneur's Odyssey, Andrew Ackerman. You should find it just fine that way. And if you do read it and you do like it, please leave a review, because reviews apparently really, really, really matter.
Absolutely. Andrew Benjamin Ackerman, you are not in trouble. You are the head of Reach Labs and published author of The Entrepreneur's Odyssey. Thank you so much for coming to Tangent today and sharing your background, your ideas, and your wisdom with us.
Thank you both for having me. This was great.
Super fun.
Muchas gracias. And thank you for listening to this episode of Tangent PropTech. If you learned something new or enjoyed the conversation, text a friend the link to this episode right now. Make sure to follow the show wherever it is that you're listening so that you never miss an episode. Tangent PropTech is co-hosted by me, Edward Cohen, along with Jeffrey Berman and Zach Aarons. You can find links, resources, and ways to connect with us in the show notes, or reach out anytime at tangentcommunity@gmail.com or on LinkedIn. We love interview suggestions, topic ideas, or just a friendly hello. If you're building something impactful in real estate or tech and want to reach our audience of decision makers, investors, and operators, email us. Again, that's tangentcommunity@gmail.com. We'll catch you next time. And remember, the best PropTech ideas usually start with a tangent.